Hey, what's up guys, and thanks for joining me over on the second channel today. So the vehicle I've got in is a 2010 Pontiac Vibe, and although this thing is small in size, there's still a ton of work that's going to go into this car today. Alright, so looking around this car, and besides the super dirty driver's floor mat, there's all kinds of dirt, debris, and grime all over the inside of this vehicle, especially in the cup holders. And there's a few more gross spots in the back too. And this customer has also opted for an engine bay detail, so I'll be tackling this dirty and neglected engine bay as well. And now, just before we dive into the detail, take a second and make sure you're subscribed to the channel and that you've got the bell on, so that way you get notified when my new videos go live. I'm definitely curious to see how much quicker I can get done with this car today compared to the trucks that I normally have in, so let's get started. Alright guys, I just want to welcome you to the video again and let you know that similar to the last real-time video, this was actually filmed back on November 30th, so I'm still using my Honda GC160 pressure washer in this video, and even though you probably can't tell, I do have my two small overhead doors cracked, and the Honda is parked right beside one of them so it can exhaust. Now I know a lot of people thought from the last real-time video that I was running the pressure washer in a closed garage, and quite frankly, had I been doing that, I wouldn't have been around to make that video. So safety first obviously, and like I said, I've got good airflow going through the garage for ventilation. Now if any of you are curious, I believe it was around -10 Celsius the day that I did this detail, so unfortunately it's far too cold to be able to wash outside, and will still be a month or two before I'm able to move back outside, but I'm already looking forward to it. Not that there's anything wrong with washing inside the garage, as it was built to handle that, but being outside gives me more room, and it's honestly just more enjoyable to be out there. So I figured I would walk you through some of my processes a little bit. And so with the pre-wash rinse you always see me do, it's such a vital step in the exterior detail, and having a good pressure washer is something that's really hard to replace, as it allows me to get the paint as clean as possible without any contact, so that when I do start the wash process, I've significantly reduced any chance of my wash mitt dragging around a piece of dirt or debris and scratching the paint. Alright, so with the vehicle rinsed, it's time to fill up my buckets, and I always put about an ounce or so of my car wash soap in my wash bucket with warm water, and then always use grit guards in the bottom of both buckets as they help to allow any dirt to settle out, which will keep it off the wash mitt and off the vehicle. Once the vehicle is covered in foam, I'll go around with my boar's hair detail brush and use it to lift any trapped dirt from down in the crevices, which can be especially helpful when there's bug guts on the vehicle, as they always seem to land right in the cracks. And for anyone wondering, this brush is perfectly safe to use on paint, so if you're curious as to where you can get one, I've got the link down in the description, so feel free to check it out. So another question I know I've seen a few times is, why don't I put the wash mitt on my hand? And the reason is that since I rinse it after every section and then wring it out, I would constantly be having to take it off and put it on, which would eat up time, and it's just one of those small efficiencies that I found after detailing for so long. Alright, so not something you guys get to see much over on the main channel, but this customer opted for an engine bay detail as well. So the very first thing to do is disconnect the battery just to be on the safe side, since I will be using water all around the engine bay, and then I'll spray on a fairly liberal amount of degreaser, and then start with my soft wheel brush to agitate all of the flat surfaces. Next, I'll use my small Speedmaster brush to get down into all those hard to reach areas. Then I'll rinse everything down with just a regular spray nozzle. I don't recommend using a pressure washer on the engine bay, as it can force water places that it shouldn't be. You may have noticed that I've got a couple of microfiber towels covering the positive and negative harnesses of the battery, and that's simply because they didn't have enough slack and I wasn't able to move them far enough away. So just put the towels down just in case they decided to move on me and make contact with the battery posts. With everything rinsed, I'll then use my leaf blower to get rid of the majority of the water before I follow up with a microfiber towel to get everything perfectly dry.
Last step is to dress the engine bay, and I'll use some 303 aerospace protectant, although sometimes I do use CarPro Pearl, but in this case I'm using 303 to leave it looking incredible. Alright, turning to the interior, and the first thing I always do is remove any of the customer's personal items that were left behind. And if you guys are curious, I always just collect them in a bag and then leave that bag in the back seat when I'm done with the vehicle. And the reason I don't put everything back is because I've heard from many of my customers that they were very glad they had the chance to go through everything. And in a lot of cases I find things that they didn't even know were in the vehicle, so they're very appreciative of that. But it also lets them know that I cleaned inside of all the compartments, which really wouldn't be noticeable if I stuffed them all back full of loose items. So after watching this for a minute, you may have noticed that this carpet was really difficult to vacuum, and I've seen this type of super cheap carpet a few times before, most recently in the disaster detail of the Mitsubishi Eclipse over on the main channel. But basically this carpet is like Velcro, and dirt and debris just stick to it. It's a major pain to deal with, and even using the drill brush or compressed air doesn't really do a whole lot. So whenever I get carpet like this in, I just do my very best to get it looking as presentable as possible, but I know it's unlikely I'll get it looking perfect. So another little tip I have for you guys is that when you're vacuuming inside a vehicle, always make sure you've got two hands on the hose. That way you can hold the end of the hose up and away from the edge of the vehicle, so it's not just dragging against the paint and scratching it. Alright, so getting started on these dirty floor mats and using a regular 1-gallon pump sprayer filled with my Chemical Guys carpet solution, diluted 20:1. I'll spray on a fairly liberal amount and then agitate with the drill brush to get all the dirt loosened and lifted up out of the fibers. And for anyone who's curious, the drill I'm using is an 18-volt Master Force drill I'd gotten probably 10 years ago from Menards down in North Dakota on a Black Friday sale. Now as I work on extracting this floor mat, if any of you don't already know, the extractor I use is a Bissell Spot Clean Professional, and like I've probably said a million times before, it's an absolutely amazing little unit for the price, and it's so much fun to use, so I'd highly recommend picking one up if you're in the market for one. I've probably put 5+ years of use on mine in less than a year, and it's still working perfectly. I've got the link to it down in the description, so feel free to give it a look. Now after I've made a first pass over the whole mat, I'll usually switch directions and make another pass, and the reason for that is because the carpet fibers typically lay in one direction, either front to back, so going side to side on them just helps to make sure I can get all the dirt and solution out. Typically each section of carpet I work on, I'll make anywhere from 3 to 6 passes, spraying water the whole time, and then I'll do one final pass of just extracting to get as much of the water out as possible. Now for this super dirty driver's floor mat here, I'm not even bothering with the Bissell, and I'm going straight to the Honda, as it's going to be able to do a much better job than the Bissell ever could for a mat that is this heavily soiled. Now the only thing is that depending on when the customer is picking up the vehicle, it can be a challenge to make sure it's dry in time, which is why it's sometimes preferable to use the Bissell. Alright, moving back inside the vehicle, and I'll work my way around all the interior trim with some all-purpose cleaner diluted 10:1 and wipe everything down with a slightly damp microfiber towel, and then I'll also use a boar's hair detail brush to agitate in the crevices. Moving to the rear hatch area where there were some pretty grimy parts, I'll use some of my APC diluted 4:1 and then blast it with steam to loosen up all of that dirt and grime. And you might notice that I'm not using an attachment on the steamer, and that's because without one, it gives a higher velocity blast of steam, which can be especially helpful to loosen any stubborn grime. Then for the rubber inserts here, I put on the bigger brush attachment so it could get down into the cracks, and as you can see, the steamer has made super quick work of this entire back area. Now with all the interior panels clean, I'm using my favorite product to dress and UV protect everything, and that's 303's Aerospace Protectant. And so using a microfiber applicator pad that I got from autogeek.net, I'll simply apply a nice thin layer and then let it dry on its own. And for my personal experience, it's going to last about 4 to 6 weeks on the interior, and it will leave everything with a nice matte finish when it dries. Not to mention it also leaves a non-slippery or greasy finish. Alright, so turning back to the exterior, I'm using my polisher and a black finishing pad to apply a layer of wax. And if you're curious, I've got the speed set to about 2.5 to 3, and then I'm just making sure I apply a nice even layer of wax around the entire vehicle. Now for any of you who struggle with getting streak-free glass, the most important thing in my opinion is that you use a waffle weave towel, as they won't leave any lint behind like regular microfiber towels will, but most importantly they won't leave streaks either. Now of course you'll need to make sure you're working on cool glass and that you're using a quality glass cleaner as well.
All right guys, and 7 hours later, I'm done with this Vibe. This was definitely a nice change of pace compared to the trucks and the SUVs I usually have in. I got through this thing way quicker today. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure you smash the thumbs up button and subscribe to the channel for more satisfying content like this. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.